Hey folks, welcome back. I'm David and we're here in my shop where I build E-War guitars. This is going to be the last episode, episode number 23 of the tutorial series on how to build an electric guitar. And this is the guy we built in this series right here. Really came out beautiful. And this video is going to be all about the setup. I'm taking it all the way through the whole setup process. It's kind of a long video, but I got a special surprise. I got a good buddy of mine, John Cochran, down at MobTown Music in Mobile, Alabama, down on Dauphin Street, doing a little demo for me. So I'm going to put him in throughout this whole video so you all can see this thing being played too, so you can hear how it sounds. Anyway, I'm thrilled to death. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for watching the whole series if you did. And I'm excited. Let's get rolling with it right now. Okay, we are down to getting some strings on this thing, setting it up, tuning it up, and plugging it in and seeing how it sounds. So I'm pretty excited. But before we do that, I've got to still slot my nut and slot my saddle pieces down here because that's the last step, and then I'm going to set the whole guitar up. We're going to go through that, and we're going to see how it goes. But anyway, so I've got some tools in front of me that I use to do this. Of course, I've got my nut slotting files here, and they go from 10 to 46, which is what the strings are. My strings, incidentally, I always use Stringjoy strings. They're amazing. They're made right up in Nashville, Tennessee, not terribly far from here. I've had great luck with them. I love the way they sound. Great strings. I highly recommend them. I've got my nut slotting file. This is a StewMac tool. And you figure out by setting your two outside strings, you figure the actual string spacing, and then you go up and down in this rule and it tells you how to do it to set the rest of the string spacing. And this is kind of cool because it compensates for the thickness of the strings going from your high E to your low E string. This spacing rule compensates for the different gauges of string. And anyway, I've got my pencil, a little scratch awl. Oh, and I'm also, once I get my saddle pieces slotted in place, I'm going to use my Dremel tool and a little buffing wheel with some metal polishing compound to make sure those little grooves that I cut in there are going to be really smooth and no burrs or anything like that on it, which could hang up on a string and break a string. So anyway, we're going to get going on that right now. I'm going to set first the two outside. I'm going to do the low E string and high E string so I could visually see it and see their spacing with regards to the fretboard, and that way I'm going to mark the two outsides. Then I'm going to get them strings out of there, use my slotting rule here to lay out the rest of them, and we're going to start slotting away. So I'm going to turn my camera down. We're going to get rolling with that right now. Okay, so I've got the strings, the high and the low E strings in place. And what I want to do is I'm going to hold them. There's a slight, it's going to angle out a little bit to get to the tuners. So I'm going to have to hold it up here by hand. But I want to visually see the placement of these strings in relationship to the outside edge of the fretboard. And what I'm basically going for, this binding is about the right thickness. I think it's 40 thousandths of an inch thick. I want my strings to be just inside the binding on both sides, top and bottom. And once I get it there, I'm going to take my pencil. I'm going to mark either side of the strings. Then I want to measure it because I initially started this neck design with the intention of having a 1.5 inch string spread at the nut. And I want to see how close we wound up being to that. Okay, so that one's kind of a wide, a little bit sloppy mark, but let me see what we have here. Okay, so it looks like I'm going to be more like just under. I am probably a 32nd of an inch under 1.5 inch string spread. But that does look like, to me, it lines up nicely with the edge of the binding. And it looks like I'm sitting on plenty of fret here. I'm not onto the bevel on the fret, so I think that's a good placement. It's a little bit under what I initially intended, but I think it's pretty good. Now I'm going to take my slotting files. This is the 10 thousandths. I'm going to take this and very carefully, notice I got some tape up here because I'm pretty bad about scratching a headstock with these things when I get going. I'm just going to do a tiny little notch, just enough to grab it. Let's see if that'll hold the string. It does, and that looks good. That is just barely inside, and I think that looks good. Now I can do the same thing on the 46 gauge string, the low E. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. I think that looks good. I'm going to just niche them in a little bit deeper, just to be sure they're holding. Now, if you remember, this nut is angled, it's beveled backwards this way towards the headstock at 13 degrees, which is the same tilt angle as the headstock. When I actually get to filing these for depth, I'm going to actually cut it a little more than 13 degrees. So the only spot that's touching on that string should be right on the face edge of the nut, which is the scale length. Okay, that one looks pretty good. Okay, I like it. I've got nice string spread. In fact, I'm going to unclip that camera and see if I can't show you what I've got here. So that is what I'm looking for right there. Each one is just inside the line of the binding, and the width looks good to me.
Let's do it with all of them.
That was awesome. Yeah, we definitely need to do. What's a good day for you? It's Tuesdays.
Tuesday.
Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing at the bridge. And take my little scratch awl. That one looks good there. Okay, I'm going to check the width here too, because it's supposed to be 2 1/8 at the bridge. I actually am a 32nd under, so I'm at 2 3/32. I happen to be a 32nd under up there too than what I initially set out to do. So I think that's probably good. I think that's good. So I'm going to do the same thing now. I'm going to take my nut slotting files. Hopefully I'll be able to see my little scratch line there. That guy sits there. That looks nice. Now my 46. Okay, I think that looks good too. Let me get that camera and I'll show you what I'm looking at down here. So I've got them just notched in, the two outside strings, and they're very close to being on the center of each saddle. And I have spacing that I'm happy with up here at the end of the fretboard. I think that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to take my string spacing ruler, and if you can see on here, it tells you which way to point the ruler. Like this end of the ruler goes towards the bass side, and this end goes towards the treble side, and you pick the most appropriate size. So we're probably going to use this side here for the nut, and maybe this side here for the bridge, but we'll see. You got to basically hold it up there, and you try to pick the two outermost ones that line up on your E strings to where they're as close as possible. And then once you find the two on the outside that line up, then you can mark the rest of them off of the other marks. So, terrible explanation, I'm sure, but anyway, let me see if I can find this now. I think that's it right there. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is it. So let me see if I can mark the rest of these. Okay, I think that looks good. Now I'm going to niche. So now I'm going to take the 13 and go carefully right on this, just a tiny little niche in it again. Now 35. Now I'm going to check it again. Okay, that is right on. Okay, that looks good. I'm happy with that. Now we're going to do the same thing down here. Okay, so what we've got so far, I've installed all the strings. I actually did that yesterday. I've notched the saddles on the bridge, and I've also notched the nut. Initially, we don't have them down to the right height yet, but I got them to where the strings are all laying in really nice, and I think they look good. And so yesterday, I actually brought it up to tune. I tuned it up, and I left the tension on the neck overnight. So then today, I came back and I checked my neck flatness, and I adjusted my truss rod to get the the top of the fretboard perfectly flat. It's really too hard to see with this thing, the top of the frets, but I'll get to that with the strings in a minute. But what my next step is, the next thing I want to do is I want to get the heights of all of my notches in both the bridge and the nut correct. So I wanted to flatten off the neck, get the strings in place, get it all under tension. Now I'm going to start working on that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen the tension on the strings, and I'm going to raise this bridge. I'm going to measure with my little measuring gauge here. I want to measure from the 22nd fret up to the bottom of the low E string, and I want 4/64 of an inch. And over here I'm going to measure from the top of the fret up to the bottom of the high E string. I'm going to go about 3/64 there. So once that height is set right, I'm going to start going back and forth and checking the nut and the bridge for my slots. And I'm going to show you how I do that in a second, but we're going to check the height, then we're going to notch these down to the proper height. I think the bridge is awfully close. I used my gauge here to check the radius on those strings down here. It looks very close. I wish I had one of the ones that you can hook up underneath, but I don't. But I'm using this for now, and later I'll check it off the fretboard itself, or off the 22nd fret itself, to make sure I have a decent 12-inch radius in this. But I think I'm very close. But anyway, so the next step I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to loosen up the strings, get this bridge height set, and we're going to go from there. Okay, so I am good with the bridge height for now. We may adjust it more later, but we've got 4/64 under the low E, and we've got 3/64 under the high E, and it goes incrementally down as we're going. So I'm good with that. So now what I'm going to do is I want to finish slotting this nut to get to the right height. And what I do on that, so I press down just after the 2nd fret right here, okay? And then I push on the 1st fret, and I want that string to just almost touch it, but not quite touch it. I still want a little flexion. I've got too much flexion there right now. And my string is still sitting higher, too high over my nut than I want. I want about half of the string to be buried below the top of the nut. So, and that looks about right. So I'm going to loosen this guy up one at a time. I'm going to take him out. I got my piece of tape here to protect it. I'm going to take the file, and I'm going to file it down, keep putting it on and off and filing it down until I get it to where I'm just not quite touching right there. So that is what I'm going to do. And also I roll this back and forth like so, because I want that to be, I don't want it to be a straight down notching. I want it to be a bit of a V, a soft V, to make sure that the nut doesn't hang up the string at all. Still got further to go. Okay, that is about as low of a string height I can get. I've got them just barely. They move just a fraction. They're just off the top. I'm a little nervous, maybe almost too low. I left the low E just a tad higher. So let me bring that up to tune. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Like I said, it may be just a little bit, too low of an action up there, but we'll find out when we go setting up the rest of the guitar. Okay, so just to kind of catch you up to where we're at, I'm kneeling down here because I like getting right down close to the guitar here while I'm doing this. But just to catch you up, so I've been working back and forth between the neck relief, the nut slotting, and the bridge slots too. So I'm real pleased. I got the strings are lined up beautifully down the fretboard. I've got a good height here. I've set the low E string. I am 4/64 off of the 22nd fret to the bottom of the string, and I'm 3/64 on the high E string to the bottom side of the high E string off of the 22nd fret. And if you remember, these frets, these last 5 frets, they dive off just a little bit. So that means we have a really close string action here in the middle of the guitar. Although I've checked a couple times and I'm not getting any fret buzz, which is really cool to me. But now, so what I want to do, and that's what I've been doing. I've been going back and forth between all these 3 things and just working it all together. Now I have, since I've had tension on the neck for a couple of days, I'm going to go back through and check everything again because, you know, the tension from those strings pulling on the neck, we kind of want to let it do what it's going to do as we're going through this setup. So now what I want to do is I'm going to take this little guy right here, my Capo, and I'm going to clip it on just above my 1st fret, and I'm going to press down here at around the 17th fret. And what I want to see if I have any give right here. I've got this neck set like super flat, and I want, though when I've got it set up like this, I still want to get a little bit of bounce in the string here. And right now the low E is touching in the middle, and so is the high. There may be just a little bit of bounce there in the middle, but not a whole lot. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and loosen up this the truss rod and allow the neck to bend up a little bit. I want just the slightest bit of space in here in the middle when I'm holding up here at a high fret. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to adjust that thing and keep going until we get it right. Okay, I think that's good. I'm pleased. I'm just curious. Let's see. Let's check right here. I've got about 2/64 below here, and I've got about 1.5/64 under the high E string at the 9th fret. So that's to me a very low action. I think that looks good. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to check for fret buzz and see where we're at with that. And to do that, of course, you want to have the guitar up here in its playing position. Nice. No fret buzz at all. I think I need to start doing a little intonation work on this thing because I know it's out about a mile. Guitars in the back.
Awesome.